The restaurant lights shimmered like warm stars against the cold November night, but inside her chest, Emily felt nothing but frost. Her trembling hands clutched the edge of her beige coat, trying to steady the storm inside her. The sound of clinking glasses and soft jazz blurred into background noise as her heartbeat pounded in her ears. She had been holding back tears for the last 15 minutes, pretending to laugh, pretending to be fine, pretending this blind date wasn't another reminder of how unlovable she felt. And then, something inside her broke. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the polished wooden floor, heads turning, eyes following her as she whispered, "I'm sorry. I can't do this." Her vision blurred as she pushed open the restaurant doors and stepped into the cold evening. The air hit her face like a slap, but it was better than sitting there pretending that her heart wasn't shattering all over again. If you believe in kindness, healing, and second chances, take a second right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe, because this story is about how one small act of compassion can change someone's entire life. The city street was damp from an earlier drizzle. The faint reflection of the restaurant lights shimmered on the wet pavement as Emily walked quickly, wiping tears from her cheeks with the back of her hand. She didn't care how she looked, her makeup smudged, her hair undone by the wind. She just wanted to get away. Away from the disappointment, the judgmental glances, the pity she had learned to read on people's faces when she told them about her past. Her blind date, Thomas, had seemed charming at first. Her best friend, Claire, had insisted he was the perfect guy. But halfway through dinner, after one too many careless jokes about baggage, Emily realized that he wasn't interested in her story. He was just collecting experiences, not people. When she tried to talk about her work at the local shelter, he laughed and said, "You must love fixing broken things." He didn't know how that sentence pierced her like a blade. Behind her, the restaurant door swung open. She heard hurried footsteps. At first, she ignored them, assuming Thomas had followed to apologize or explain himself. She couldn't bear another half-hearted, "I didn't mean it that way." But then a voice called her name, gentle, hesitant, yet full of concern. It wasn't Thomas's voice. It was someone else, the waiter. He was the one who had served their table, the quiet man with kind eyes and an easy smile. She remembered how he had subtly refilled her glass of water when she was too nervous to ask, how he had noticed her trembling hands and offered napkins before she spilled her drink. He had been watching, not in judgment, but in silent understanding. "Emily, wait, please." His voice echoed faintly against the empty street. She slowed, turning reluctantly. He jogged toward her, his dark coat fluttering slightly as the evening wind picked up. When he reached her, he wasn't out of breath. He just looked at her, really looked, the way no one had in a long time. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't mean to intrude. I just wanted to make sure you're okay." For a second she couldn't speak. People didn't do that. Strangers didn't chase you down the street just to check if you were okay. She tried to nod, but her lip quivered, and the tears came again. He stepped closer, but not too close, keeping a respectful distance. "You don't deserve to be spoken to like that," he said quietly, his words cutting through the silence like a lifeline. "You deserve better. I just wanted you to know that." Something about the sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. She had heard countless words of comfort before, but none had ever sounded so genuine. Maybe it was the way he said it, not as a savior, but as someone who simply cared. She whispered a thank you, her voice barely audible. They stood there for a moment, the hum of the city around them, the faint flicker of streetlights dancing off the puddles at their feet. Then he smiled, shyly. "My name's Daniel," he said. "I know this is random, but would you like me to walk you to your car? It's getting cold." Emily hesitated but nodded. Somehow she trusted him. Maybe because he hadn't tried to fix her, only acknowledged her pain. They walked in silence for a while, their footsteps echoing softly. Daniel didn't pry, didn't ask questions. He just walked beside her, matching her pace. And for the first time in months, Emily felt safe in someone's company. When they reached her car, she turned to him and managed a small smile. "Thank you, Daniel. Really." He smiled back, and with a gentle nod he said, "Take care of yourself, okay?" Then he turned and walked back toward the restaurant, leaving her standing there in the soft drizzle, wondering why a complete stranger's kindness had touched her more deeply than any man's affection had in years. Over the next few days, Emily couldn't get Daniel out of her mind. It wasn't romantic at first. It was something deeper, something warm. She thought about how effortlessly kind he had been, how he didn't expect anything in return. After years of being in relationships where love felt conditional, Daniel's simple humanity had felt like sunlight on frost. 1 week later, she found herself back at the restaurant, not for a date, but just for coffee. She didn't expect to see him, but there he was, behind the counter, his sleeves rolled up, a soft tune humming under his breath as he cleaned a table. When he noticed her, surprise flickered across his face, followed by a genuine smile. "You came back," he said. "I did," she replied with a small laugh, "and I owe you a coffee." He chuckled. "You don't owe me anything, but I'll take the company." They sat by the window, watching the world outside blur by in streaks of autumn gold and grey. They talked about simple things at first, about books, favorite places, the comfort of small-town diners, the quiet strength of solitude. But as the hours slipped by, their words deepened. Emily told him about her past, the failed engagement, the loss of her father, the wall she built around her heart to protect herself from more hurt. She expected him to flinch or offer advice, but he didn't. He just listened with that same quiet attentiveness that had drawn her in from the start. Daniel, she learned, had his own scars. He had once been an architect, until life, loss and burnout had stripped him of everything but his will to start over. The restaurant was his way of finding peace again, one meal, one moment, one kind word at a time. Sometimes, he said, you don't need to rebuild everything. Just something, just enough to feel alive again. Weeks turned into months, and their friendship grew like spring after a long winter, slowly, softly, almost without them realizing it. Emily started volunteering more at the shelter, and Daniel would often stop by with warm meals for the residents. They laughed more than they used to, healed more quietly than they knew. One night, after closing, they sat on a bench outside the restaurant. The city was hushed, the stars barely visible through the mist. Emily looked at Daniel and whispered, "Do you ever wonder why some people enter your life at the exact moment you think you're done trying?" Daniel smiled, his gaze distant. "Maybe because life knows what we need before we do." For a long moment they said nothing. Then he added, "You taught me something too, you know, that sometimes it's not about fixing broken things. It's about learning that broken can still be beautiful." Her eyes welled up again, but this time the tears didn't hurt, they healed. Because in that moment she realized something profound. She wasn't broken anymore. She had been cracked open, yes, but through those cracks, light had finally found its way in. 1 year later, the same restaurant glowed with golden lights. The same soft jazz filled the air. But this time, Emily wasn't crying. She was sitting at a corner table, dressed in the same beige coat, smiling as Daniel approached her with 2 cups of coffee. The world had changed around them, but more importantly, they had changed within it. She had gone from someone running away from pain to someone running toward hope. He'd gone from someone who served others to someone who finally allowed himself to be loved. They weren't perfect. They didn't have a fairy tale ending, but they had something real, something honest. And that was enough. As the night deepened, Daniel reached across the table, his hand brushing hers gently. "You know," he said softly, "I still remember that night you ran out crying. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I couldn't let you believe you weren't worth kindness." Emily smiled, eyes glistening. "And I didn't know that a single sentence could change my life. But it did." They sat there, hands entwined, the city humming quietly around them. 2 people who had once been strangers, now bound by something far stronger than chance, empathy, timing, and the courage to care. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that there is still goodness in this world, please take a moment to like this video. subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to believe in kindness again. And before the story ends, here's a special request. Comment below, "I believe in second chances." Let's fill the comments with hope, love, and kindness. As they left the restaurant that night, the air was crisp and full of promise. Emily leaned into Daniel as they walked down the same street where she had once cried alone. The lights above shimmered just as they had that night, but now, instead of reflecting her pain, they reflected her peace. Sometimes, the most beautiful beginnings are disguised as endings. Sometimes the people meant to find us do so in the most unexpected ways, like a stranger chasing after you, just to remind you of your worth. And sometimes, all it takes to change a life is 7 simple words whispered into the cold night air: "You deserve better." Don't ever forget that.